Good morning. So what do we have here then? Check this out. FoilDrive Assist Plus on the Axis 125 tray. But looky here, this is the new integrated mast. It's a collaboration between Project Cedrus and obviously FoilDrive. And the cable is totally integrated inside the mast. There's no need for any tape, any cable guides, and this one you can have the motor positioned anywhere, but this one is positioned right at as far at the bottom of the mast as you can for full e-foiling mode. You can't change the position of the motor. Once you've asked for it to be at a certain position, FoilDrive will put it in that position, and then that's it for that mast. But being Project Cedrus, you can change the adapter head to fit any type of foil system. So after a few weeks of seriously stormy weather, we're finally back to the usual calm, lovely sunny mornings. Expecting a bit of wind this afternoon, but this morning, perfect e-foiling weather. Let's give it a go. Woohoo! So smooth. I love the fact that you get a little bit of a prop noise if you're in any danger of breaching whatsoever. Whoa, let's go down a bit. Let's see. Okay, so the lack of drag is just awesome. It's crazy how smooth it feels. Wow. Laying into turns, just bliss, it really is. Normally, given the choice of e-foiling or just anything else, foiling, I can't do anything else, but this is really, let's just see if it pumps. Hang on. Woo! Oh my god, it still pumps. This is the Axis PNG 1010. So I was not expecting to be able to pump like this. Okay, I can feel a smidge more drag, but no way near what I thought it was going to be. Wow, that really does show that the majority, the vast majority of drag must come from the taping the cable to the mast, not the pod. Woo! Oh my god!
Okay, so I think it's fairly obvious that you can tell I've been really enjoying the integrated mast. But now that the initial excitement has worn off, how do I feel that the integrated mast stacks up against the non-integrated mast, both in e-foil position and with the motor higher up for use as a normal assist? Well, I'm going to try and address all of those issues in this video. So I've got to be completely honest here. I've never been a big fan of proper full e-foils. They're too big, they're too heavy, they're too cumbersome, they're not maneuverable enough. The feeling of drag is just not what I want out of foiling. Because I had an extra long cable on my Assist Plus, I would do the odd occasional bit of e-foiling, but that was restricted to using a big foil, just cruising around for, say, a sunset session or something like that. But now with the integrated mast and the lack of drag, it really has opened up flat water and other forms of e-foiling, and it is just so much fun. With such a light setup, your own equipment that you're used to, and smaller foils, it's got to the point where this has now become a really, really exciting thing for me to do, and I will build it into my sort of foiling repertoire, if you like. So here I'm on the PNG 910, and I've had to use a slightly bigger board, the 29 litre Apple Tree Pro V2, but with that board it's still pretty easy to get up on foil, on flat water, and as you can see by the video, it's just turned flat water e-foiling into something that is now ridiculous amounts of fun. Not just limited to cruising around, but you know, you can throw the board around in carves, and it's just, like I keep saying, super fun. And it didn't end there, because I then went down to the PNG 850, and again I had to go up to a slightly bigger board size. This is the Axis Pump 4.6 by 37 litres, but that's still a really small prone board for me at 82 kilos. And just look at it, it really is, you know, with a small foil like that, wingtip breaches doesn't bother you, so you can really angle it hard as you carve around, and it literally has turned e-foiling, for me anyway, on flat water into something that's so much more fun than I could have imagined. And the icing on the cake here is that despite the motor being permanently below the water, you can still pump it really easily. Not just pumping, but you can also surf it really well as well. So here I'm on the PNG 910, the Axis Pump 37 litres. And although you can't tell because the GoPro 360 footage just irons out all of the bumps, the swell is actually waist to overhead high. So in conditions like this, it's actually a huge advantage to be able to e-foil out back after you've finished riding each bit of swell. The lumps are so big that to pump over them, or even to e-foil with the motor pod higher up, is super difficult. So the e-foil position definitely makes up for the fact that there is that little bit of extra drag from the motor pod being underwater. But I really want to stress here that the motor pod and motor from FoilDrive is so small and so hydrodynamic that it really doesn't deter from having a really cool foiling experience. Okay, I completely admit that it's much better to have the motor pod out of the water when you're surfing, but trust me, I've used proper e-foils, and the size of those motors and pods are so long, and a little bit wider as well, most of them, that you really do notice the drag, and it does deter from your enjoyment. There was a bit of a learning curve even with this setup, but once I'd had say 20 minutes on the water and I'd gotten to grips with the extra back foot pressure when you release the trigger and compensating for the extra drag from the motor pod being underwater, trust me, it was such an enjoyable experience that in the right conditions I wouldn't hesitate to use this E4 setup and surf again. Okay, so let's run a video while I try and summarize my thoughts about the integrated mast versus the non-integrated mast. Advantages and disadvantages. We'll get through the disadvantages first. There's not many really. First of all, the motor is in a fixed position. You cannot change it from E-foil low down on the mast to the assist position high up on the mast. So it's one or the other, can't change it. And secondly and finally is the additional cost. This is an upgrade. Upgrades always cost, and you've got to work out for yourself whether the cost is worth the potential benefits. And the potential advantages are, well, there is a definite lack of drag. Obviously, that's more pronounced with the motor low down on the mast in the E4 position, because there's a much greater length of of cable that's been removed by being integrated. So that lack of drag doesn't just equate to a smoother ride and considerably better performance, but it also equates to a longer runtime with each battery. Each charge just lasts for longer due to the reduced drag. You also get a much reduced setup time. It's so much easier to use the integrated mast. You don't have to worry about screwing the pod on and off your mast the whole time. You don't even have to worry about screwing the motor into the pod. There's no cable guides on the trailing edge of the mast. There's no tape. All of that is completely eliminated. It's really nice and easy. And the mast itself is a seriously good quality mast from Project Cedrus, and as such it has lots of adapters available to fit most fuselages, most brands and foils, and not to mention the seriously good quality workmanship from FoilDrive in having done the conversion. And I mean, it just oozes quality, it really does. So that to me sums up the advantages and disadvantages of using the integrated mast versus the non-integrated mast. Really, what it boils down to is that this is a luxury item. And while it's not essential for me personally, because I do most of my foiling with FoilDrive, apart from winging and high wind, because I do so much foil driving, it really is definitely worth the cost of the upgrade in terms of the performance benefits. Okay, so now let's have a look at e-foil motor position versus the assist motor position. Why am I bothering with this? Surely it's blindingly obvious that if you're going to be doing a lot of e-foiling, then it's quite simple. You need to get the motor fixed in the full e-foil position as low on the mast as possible. And if the majority of the foiling that you're going to be doing is anything other than e-foiling, then again, you should be getting the motor fixed high on the mast, close to the board. Fairly simple, of course it is, but I really wanted to share just how much better the performance is in full e-foil position when using the integrated mast compared to the non-integrated mast. In the past, I've tried using my non-integrated Assist Plus mast as a full e-foil in waves, flat water pumping, downwinding, and I hated it. I really did. The drag just killed it for me. If you've ever had a plastic bag wrapped around your foil or seaweed wrapped around the mast, you'll know what I mean by how much it just slows you down and just deters from the performance to the point where you have to stop and change things. The only time I would ever use it in full e-foil mode was just to cruise around on flat water with a big foil, just chilling around, usually sunset session, that sort of thing. But I wouldn't dream of taking it in the surf or doing any downwinding with it. However, with the integrated mast, even with the motor permanently underwater in full e-foil position, the lack of drag means that the overall performance is so high that I would definitely surf with it, in the right conditions of course, not in all conditions, and I would even downwind with it. If it's the only mast that I've got for using with FoilDrive, it wouldn't stop me from doing all of those things. And don't get me wrong, I would always prefer to have the motor high on the mast and therefore out of the water whenever possible for surfing, downwinding and flat water pumping, but my point is that with the integrated mast, all of those foiling disciplines are not only totally doable, but now that there's so little reduction in performance, it's no longer frustrating to do all of those things. And I need to point out here that there's definitely a very noticeable difference in technique needed when changing between powered and non-powered flight with the motor permanently underwater. But like everything in foiling, you get used to it very quickly and soon it becomes just second nature. To be honest, if you're not swapping between e-foil and assist motor positions regularly, then you'll get used to it so quickly that you'll barely notice the extra drag and you'll certainly compensate for any changes in technique so that it eventually becomes as natural as foiling as non-e-foil foiling. Okay, so that's the e-foil motor position. What about the motor when it's in assist position? Usually, on average, say 6 to 8 inches below the board. Well, I have to admit that when taking off and getting onto foil, I can't really notice any reduction in drag, but that's got to be because the drag from the board is so much more significant when it's moving through the water. So if you're only using FoilDrive as an assist to get on foil and then you don't do any e-foiling at all, then apart from the ease of setup, which is actually really cool, the integrated mast isn't really going to have much, if any, impact on your ride when you're on foil. However, if you're going to be doing any amount of what I call partial e-foiling, for example, to help you e-foil out back much further than you could with just pumping alone, or to help you connect waves with little or no pumping in between the waves, that sort of thing. In that case, then the reduction in drag, even from the short length of missing cable, is actually quite significant. Although I have to say that the benefit is probably more from the increased runtime you get from each battery charge, rather than from actually noticing the reduced drag while on foil. If the water's choppy, I can't say that I can notice much difference if that short length of cable is exposed or not, but having said that, if the water state is super smooth, then I can definitely notice that the ride is smoother when e-foiling with the motor in the assist position on the integrated mast. So for me personally, I would definitely say that the integrated mast is worth it. It increases performance, reduces setup time, and as such has enough of a positive impact on my foiling and the time that I have for foiling for me to justify the extra cost. However, as I stated earlier, there's no denying that this is a non-essential luxury item. You can do everything with the non-integrated mast that you can do with the integrated mast. Maybe a good way to look at it is like it's an optional upgrade. Like most upgrades, it provides some benefits and as such comes at a cost. Will it enhance your enjoyment? Yes. Is it essential? No. Will it get you into trouble with your significant other? Most likely. Take the red pill or take the blue pill, the choice is yours.
Oh wow, this is so nice.